The newly established American Basketball Hall of Fame is going to welcome its first class of inductees at a ceremony next month at the Charles H. Wright Museum. The honorees include former professional basketball players, 2 high school coaches, and a very familiar Detroit Pistons announcer. The American Basketball Hall of Fame launched here in Detroit this year, and future plans include a state-of-the-art interactive facility. Joining me now are 2 of the honorees, former college standout Stanley Ruffin and the Detroit Pistons play-by-play announcer George Blaha. Welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, what a great idea. Tell me about the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Well, this is something that came about. Lamont Robinson came up with the idea, the concept of honoring individuals in and around the city of Detroit, and not just Detroit, but surrounding cities and states, those who were somewhat unsung. They were very popular when they played, and the community recognizes them, and some of them have already been honored. Spencer Haywood and Dave Bing, they're in the National Basketball Hall of Fame. Yeah. But he just thought that it would be a nice idea to have a Hall of Fame for individuals who were not recognized for their exploits.
Yeah, and of course, we have such a rich basketball history here in the city of Detroit. I can't imagine it's easy to even winnow the number of people down to an acceptable number to talk about a Hall of Fame, right?
Exactly. And so when you're talking about an inaugural, this is the first, and I think he's done a real good job of adding some diversity to those who will be inducted for this first honorees for this American Basketball Hall of Fame. I think he's done a great job. He's got some from all different genres of basketball, pro as well as high school and college. So I think he's done a pretty good job.
So tell us about your career.
Well, I had this thing where I didn't play varsity high school basketball, but I had this growth spurt, and you probably heard that from a number of players. And I went from 5'9" to 6'3", and I was playing a little pickup ball, and somebody saw me and said, you need to think about this thing more seriously.
Right.
So I went to OCC as a walk-on. And my first game, I had, I think, what they call a triple-double now. And so I started getting all these offers, and one in particular was Steve Fisher, who was at that time the assistant coach at Western Michigan University. And Bowling Green, Ball State, U of D, Ferris State, number of schools. So I ended up working with Steve Fisher and thought I was going there until he told me, well, Les Whitkey's going to take the job at Army, and I'm going to take the job as the assistant for Bill Frieder. So I worked at camp at Bill Frieder at University of Michigan, and he asked me to come as a walk-on because they didn't have any scholarships. And my coach at the time at OCC said, well, they've got a recruit, an All-American recruit named Eric Turner, and you play the same position. I was a point guard. Maybe you better look at Murray State. So I ended up going down to Murray State. Didn't work out, but that's pretty much it. Transitioned into a lot of things and worked a number of camps at the University of Michigan. So I call myself an honorary Michigan Wolverine.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really great. My friend Freddie Hunter is another guy who walked on, or tried to walk on at Michigan, and ultimately ended up with a scholarship. Mr. Blaha, your name and your voice are going to be really familiar to our viewers. Congratulations on the induction into the Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you. I just want to thank basically the basketball fans around. You know, it's the fans who've made my career reasonably successful. You know, if they decided that they didn't like what I did, they'd have turned off the radio or turned off the TV, and sooner or later the Pistons would have turned me off. Right. So the fans have been great. And the game, the players, the coaches, I appreciate it all.
Yeah. Remind me how long you have been doing Pistons announcement.
Well, in the 1976-77 season was my first. So this season will be my 44th.
Wow.
And I can always look back to the fact that the first season after the NBA and the ABA merged was my first year. Okay. So a couple of franchises from the ABA came over to our league, including the Indiana Pacers and the Denver Nuggets and so forth. But we kind of pulled all those great players together, and the league, I think, started to get better and better and better.
What's changed the most over the time that you've been calling games in terms of the game itself?
Great question. I think the game is less physical now. I'm not sure I like that.
The refs are all over them if they touch each other. Right?
I'm not sure I like that, but it is what it is. And it is probably more pleasing to watch as far as some people are concerned, because there's more free flow in the game, and you see the true skills of players. in the old days when a guy was strong enough to hand check you, then you weren't going anywhere.
Right, right.
And so you had to think of other ways to make something
Couldn't
happen
just go
on
through.
the court.
Yeah.
So, and the great big men don't seem to be as plentiful as they used to be. Bob Lanier, for instance, a great Detroit Piston. I think he still would have been fine today because he had so much skill and such a soft touch, but to do his work down, being big and strong around the basket wouldn't have been as easy because they were calling everything.
Yeah, and also you've got these big men now who move like they're point guards, people who are centers or forwards, but shoot the ball and dribble and handle, and I mean all this. I mean it's a different game.
Everybody has to be able to do almost everything.
Yeah.
And so there aren't quite as many specialists, It's kind of hard to decide if a guy, well, is he a power forward? Is he a small forward? Is he a center, point guard, shooting guard? Most point guards now are scorers.
Right.
So they have a little more of a scorer's mentality than the classic point guard of the past used to have.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about some of the other folks who are going to be among the inductees.
Well, that's the diversity that I appreciate that Lamont has come up with. We're going to talk about a former Ecorse High School player. I went to Ecorse High, named Archie Clark.
Okay.
That's going to make that's going to be the original crossover. They talk about Anthony Hardaway and these guys. They crossover.
They learned it from him.
Archie Clark, man. John Long, Spencer Haywood, Willie Burton, Derek Coleman, Jalen Rose, Vinnie Johnson, Tim McCormick. You've got a legendary coach, the modern-day Will Robinson, and Perry Watson from Southwest Detroit. And then you have, of course, Antoine Jobert. They know him as the judge. And you have John Long. I mentioned him. But all of these individuals will be going in and very well deserved.
Yeah. Talk about what basketball did for you in life. I mean, I always love the stories of the way that athletics and team sports in particular prepare people for other things.
Well, I've never lacked confidence.
Yeah.
But what basketball and sports does is it takes you to another level because of the ingredients that it takes to be a ball player, the dedication, the discipline, the determination. But it also teaches you something that you need in life, and that is how to play a role. And all of us have to play roles in life. Somebody has to take the lead. And it's not always the best person who has the most skills that takes the lead. Generally speaking, it's the one who works the hardest.
Yeah.
And so we've seen, and the coaches have told us, we may have more talent than them, but if they outwork us, they'll win. And so it just teaches you how to matriculate in life and become not just a leader, but a role player, a contributor. And so that's what I've learned, that it has helped me to be the best I can be and get along with people and work with people.
Yeah. We mentioned the fact that Perry Watson's a modern-day Will Robinson.
Yes.
In my opinion, and Will and I were friends, God rest his soul, I felt like he might have been the most impressive human being I ever met. Will sent so many young people to college, and every day at practice he'd read to them about current events. I mean, they learned things you learn in the classroom actually at the gym before practice. So, and he was a disciplinarian, but all his players knew that he loved them and cared about them. And amazing guy.
Yeah.
That's the point I wanted to make. I met Perry Watson when I was being recruited at Western Michigan. We were working a basketball camp. And I learned that Perry Watson was not just a coach. He was a father figure and like an uncle. And they loved and trusted him.
They did.
I mean, he sent a lot of players to the NBA. Jalen Rose, I don't know if I mentioned, Jalen Rose is one that what he's doing now is a direct result of how Perry worked with those boys. And I mean, he worked with them as sons, not just as players, but he really was a hands-on type of guy.
George, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the 3 championship seasons that you got to cover, announce for the Pistons. I was a teenager for the first 2, and it was just such an incredible moment in the city, and in terms of belief in the city and who we were. That team really embodied, I thought, our character.
Exactly. They were a Detroit-type team, and this is such a great basketball city, basketball state as well, but let's just concentrate on Detroit and the Detroit area for a minute. To deliver the first basketball professional championship
Yeah.
to the Motor City was a thrill for all of us.
Yeah.
And the Bad Boys, I mean, everybody loved the Bad Boys. And I tell you the truth, I thought, well, there'll never be another team that could capture the love and admiration of our community like those guys. And then along came Ben Wallace and the Going to Work group. And that team was absolutely loved. And so we've had two championship teams that played like they were Detroiters. And Detroiters love both those teams.
And that commonality between them, they were both about the work and not much else.
Exactly. And when I think back at Isaiah Thomas being the captain of the Bad Boys, the thing that makes that so impressive is there were 7, 8, maybe 10 guys on that team who were smart enough, tough enough, talented enough to be captain. So for him to be captain, that was really saying something.
All right. Well, congratulations, and thanks for being here.
Good to be here. Glad for you having us here. We appreciate it.
We appreciate it very much.